I learned that the food industry was indeed not doing us a favor, but they were replacing a mere fraction of the nutrients that were lost by removing the bran and germ. They began to remove the outer part is the bran, the inner part is the germ, where all the vitamins, minerals, fiber, the oils, and the fats. They began to remove that from the flour to keep the flour from spoiling. Well, when my bowels start moving every day, I'm eliminating my waste every day, all of this went away. And I can stand here today and tell you, I have not had an antihistamine or a decongestant of any kind since 1991.
You know, and hear this?
Back in the 70s and early 80s, most of what you read was about supplementation, not as much about diet, a little bit. But I ate fairly healthy and then I would supplement. So it just plugged along, and then I began having children, and I'm Southern, we cook, so we ate real food. I didn't buy packaged things. But in 1991, I was introduced to a healthy eating concept that radically changed my life.
Okay.
Through a publication, a medical publication, I learned the history of white flour, what had been done to those grains to make that flour. And then in that same publication, it had a brief discussion of most of the common diseases that plague America and how it was directly related to our consumption of white flour. And when white flour came on the scene, the health of our country started to drastically decline. With my background, this made perfect sense to me. As a food scientist, and in my studies, I don't know why I never put the pieces of the puzzle together before. I think as a food scientist, when I read the ingredient label on bread or flour or whatever, and it said enriched, I thought, yay, we are doing, we're doing the world a favor, us food industry. We're putting these vitamins back in to make it better than it was. But here's what I learned in that journal. I learned that grains are the most nutrient-dense food that God has given us. I learned that wheat actually is a nearly perfect food, contrary to what we're hearing today. But I learned that only when it is freshly milled are all the nutrients contained. And we can talk about that a little more in detail in a bit. I learned that the food industry was indeed not doing us a favor, but they were replacing a mere fraction of the nutrients that were lost by removing the bran and germ. They began to remove the outer part is the bran, the inner part is the germ, where all the vitamins, minerals, fiber, the oils, and the fats. They began to remove that from the flour to keep the flour from spoiling. This led to the invention of these huge steel rolling mills, came on the scene about 1900. White flour, white bread became food for the masses.
Is that where we get the term of rolled oats? I think that's, we still use that term, that same kind of machinery.
No, rolled oats, actually, oats are very soft grain, and they're actually a little different anatomy from most other grains. The fiber and the oils are in the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. So they're really not as processed. I think that's why so many doctors, when they tell you to increase your fibers, eat oatmeal, because it is a grain that still has all the fiber intact. But oats actually do spoil, so because of the oils. And so they're soft, and they'll send it through a machine that just flattens them, rolls it.
So this is something different, these rolling machines you're talking about.
Yes. No, these are steel rolling mills that the grain would drop through, crush the grain. Because the bran and germ part is more coarse, then they would go through a sifter. You all might have your grandmother's sifter that she sifted her flour. That would sift out the coarser bran and then leave you with this long-lasting white flour. So that came on the scene in the early 1900s. And so this shook my world. It opened my eyes to what was being done to the flour, and then I could see the relationship of the common diseases that even I was struggling with some. And so I was led to purchase a little in-home grain mill, and it's still the most valuable appliance on my kitchen counter today. But so I purchased this grain mill, and it's funny because in my readings, I knew that whole wheat flour was better, so I'd buy the stuff from the store and it's dry and like sandpaper, and I couldn't get a decent muffin or just without adding some white flour to it. I later learned it's because they remove the oil even from that and partially degerm it so that it doesn't spoil as quickly. But anyway, so I'm very passionate. By the end of this episode, everyone will know, as you already know in our talking. And so I said, we're doing this, and if we have to choke this bread down, white flour's never coming into our house again. It's all whole grain. To my surprise, this little grain mill comes into my home. I mill flour, I make bread, and the bread was delicious. Absolutely delicious, light and fluffy, and I made pancakes and I made muffins, absolutely delicious. But the coolest thing was I made bread today, I ate bread today, and the next morning, I pooped. I don't know how to say it. Constipation was gone. Something I had struggled with all my growing up here, all my life, really. I didn't know it was really that big a problem. When you start getting a little older, you go, something's not right with this. And I had tried all kinds of things outside of chemical laxatives. I knew I didn't want to go there. And some gave me some relief, but it wasn't something you could do every day. But now, all I had to do was eat my bread and no problem. So that was gone forever. I had 5 young children at the time. And I homeschooled, and I, had young children, and I was tired. I started eating the bread, and I noticed I was not tired as much. I had energy. I noticed my sugar cravings went away. We talked a little bit about that. I was now getting the good complex carbohydrates that my body craved for energy. I was now getting this sustained release of these carbohydrates for my energy. I noticed my dependence on antihistamines went completely away. It took me a little while to figure that one out, but
well, let's talk about that. So you were on antihistamines. So
yeah, I thought postnasal drip was the way God made me. I thought it was my cross I had to bear. Okay, it wasn't as bad. So I stayed congested. I had to take antihistamines at least at night, just about every night to sleep, because I couldn't, my nose, would close up. I couldn't breathe. Well, what I later discovered, and like I said, the bread and the fiber and all that, I understood the constipation. I figured out the energy. I figured out the sugar cravings, but I was like, I can't figure this sinus congestion. Why did it all go away? Well, what I realized is my constipation. When we are constipated, your bowels, that's where your body dumps the waste, the trash that it doesn't want, and it's like, take it out. And we're supposed to go every day and take out the trash. And when I wasn't, and we don't, America's the most constipated nation in the world, not sure how they found that out, but anyway, we are supposedly. And so when our bowels don't eliminate every day, those toxins are sitting there. Not getting taken out. Well, they're going to get reabsorbed. They're going to get absorbed into our body through our colon. And when those get into our system, then a body's response to toxins is to make mucus. So you can blow it out your nose or cough it up.
To contain it, to get rid of it.
To get rid of it. It's another elimination system that we don't think about so much. Why do you think you get a snotty nose and congestion if you have a cold? It's because whatever virus or bacteria, either the toxin it's producing or the bacteria itself, that's your body's response trying to get rid of it. Kind of like diarrhea and throwing up.
When people get the sweats.
Exactly. Yes, sweating.
Fever,
but this is something people don't make that connection. Well, when my bowels start moving every day, I'm eliminating my waste every day, all of this went away. And I can stand here today and tell you, I have not had an antihistamine or a decongestant of any kind since 1991.
And here's the funny thing, is that you went to something that was so natural.
Yes.
You went back to bread. Instead of going, well, this vegetarian diet works, or this ketogenic diet works, or this Paleolithic diet works. You just kind of went back to what the Bible says about bread. And we're going to get more into that as well.
Yeah.
But you loved bread, right? I mean, you were a bread lover.
Well, and this was the exciting thing. In all my years of study, I've done green drinks, I've done brewer's yeast, I've done all kinds of things, kind of like you, vegan, now keto. We go from one end to the other. And first thing I tell people is, how many are you still doing today? Most of us not. I'm still doing this today, 31 years later. But here was the exciting thing. My kids love this. This was not something I had to coerce my children to eat. Eat your broccoli, drink this green drink. Because when I handed them my green drink, they're like, that's not happening. You know, no, brewer's yeast. The brewer's yeast craze back in the late 70s. You probably weren't even born. But anyway, it was like they promised you it tasted better if you made it a day ahead and refrigerated it. I would have hated to taste it the day before. Gave me energy, because lots of B vitamins, but didn't touch my constipation. Didn't touch my sinus congestion, didn't touch some of the basic issues. And we weren't a sickly family because we ate pretty well with everything except our bread. But this one change brought significant, I mean, just that handful right there, most Americans are struggling with that. You know, constipation, sinus congestion, low energy, we're living on a more and more caffeine.
Right.
So as a mom of 5 children, I began to notice, especially my youngest child that was born, well, that was my 6th child, then was conceived and born after bread. She never had the snotty nose, never, even as a toddler. I began to notice, you know, that they weren't sick as much or as often. Like I said, not that we were a super sickly family, but none of them post-bread ever had an ear infection, which before we had those, you know, just
post-bread.
Post-bread.
Most people would say, well, when you started eating bread, that's where everything went wrong. But we're going to get into like the proper way to do this.
It was amazing. And it was delicious. I mean, this was healthy food that we just added to what other real healthy foods we were already eating. And it was significant and noticeable and life-changing. One of my children's warts went away in the first month, and I knew it was the bread. And we'll get to that maybe in another session, but because that's exciting. That's a whole teaching in itself. But
Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon. And I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.